What's up, Victoria? It's Victoria, and today I want to play with a little bit of colorful makeup. I feel like a lot of my audience at this point is like neutral Nellies, and so what I wanted to do today is to show us how to wear color, and maybe more color than we're usually comfortable with, in a way that's very simple and I don't think is too alarming or like threatening. And it doesn't require a ton of skill. I think that sometimes there's this false narrative that colorful makeup means you need to have incredible skill sets to make that work, a ton of knowledge about color theory to make that work, and like those things might be helpful, but color can still be enjoyed by all of us at any level. Now, in my last video, I did a little more of a demure color where I just put a little bit of green liner on the inner corner of my eye, and I really like that. We're gonna do a little bit more color today. I'm just feeling very inspired by color recently, as you can tell by my top. I picked it out specifically because we are talking about color in this video. I'm gonna start with the Victoria Beckham Cell Rejuvenating Primer. I also felt like today I could show you how I put on my makeup. Now, obviously you always see me put on my makeup, but sometimes I like do things down here that I don't always show because I'm not sure how relevant it is. No one asked for this, but this is just like how I would do my makeup. This face of makeup that we're doing is like a face of makeup that I would definitely wear out. And also all of the products I'll be using today are from my everyday makeup drawer. If you feel so encouraged to try to follow along with makeup that you have, I highly encourage that. You don't need to buy any of the makeup that I will be featuring in today's video. I'm sure there are some colorful things in your makeup collection that you don't use that often, and that's what I suggest you pull out if you want to play along. I'm also going to use the SISLEY Blur Expert on my nose. I know a lot of people will use the back of their hand to mix product together. I don't really care to do that. So I have like a mixing palette. I didn't spend like a ton of money on this. Well, this one came from my makeup kit in beauty school, but I also got one. I bought like a palette knife. Like I bought one of these for like $3 back when I used Amazon. It like came with it. So like you can get these relatively inexpensive. So I don't really love having product on my hand, kind of just like for sensory reasons. And then on top of that, sometimes if I forget that I've done it, I just get makeup all over everything. So this is actually just like a much more foolproof way for me to make sure that I'm like not having to put makeup on the back of my hand for either one of those two reasons. I am currently still working on trying to finish up this. This is from SURRATT. It's the Dewdrop Concealer. I did receive this in PR. This is the shade 2. It's not a perfect match for me, but I am literally just trying to go through it. So I'm going to click some of this out onto the mixing palette. I don't think I need to show you like it actually falling onto the mixing palette. I think you understand. Also, it would be really hard for me to do that. The thing about this concealer is that it's super high coverage, and I don't use a ton of concealer as it is, and it's super high coverage. So it was a very economical concealer for me. Everyone's usage of product is going to be very different. I'm just speaking to my own personal experience. So as a all over face product, I don't really like love it because there's like a ton of coverage in it. So I'm going to add this. This doesn't really lessen the coverage, but it kind of like thins out the formula and adds a little bit of a glow. The SURRATT Dewdrop Concealer is pretty matte. So this is the AURIC Glow Lust. I'm just going to add like a quarter of a pump of this to my mixture. The little dot is Glow Lust, and then the rest is the Dewdrop Concealer. Then I'm going to take a mixing knife and just mix it together. Nothing really super exciting happening on the mixing palette, but this is how I do it. You could do it on the back of your hand. You don't need a mixing palette, but just in case you ever wanted to try this, you don't have to spend a ton of money to get a mixing palette. Or you can use like the back of a product too. If there's a product that you don't mind getting messy and it has like a flat surface, you can certainly do that too. And like what I like to do with the excess is I just like start putting it on my face a little bit. Here's something that, I don't know, maybe some of you will find helpful. I have found that I've been using a lot less foundation whenever I'm using foundation, and that's like due to coverage, but I also think it's the way I've been like loading my brush. So whenever the Patrick Ta foundation came out, a lot of people were having issues with that formula, and it's a formula that works really well on me, but I think it's because I just use less product than maybe most people do. So this is just like, maybe try this if you don't. So what I like to do is I like to get my brush in the product, and then I also like to go to the side where I don't have any product, and I like to kind of like buff my brush into the foundation and then put that on my face. And then I feel like the brush is more evenly covered in foundation and applies a little more evenly, instead of whenever I pick up product, sometimes there's just like a big dot in one part of, and it kind of like clumps all in one space, and then you're like kind of working to blend it out more. I feel like this gives me a little bit more of a seamless application. I also feel like it allows me to build, like I said, this concealer is pretty full coverage. If you're applying it directly to your face, this is a way for me to evenly disperse the concealer without having as much coverage as the concealer would usually have. So I don't know, maybe this will help some of you, or maybe it's something to try if you feel like you run through foundation, if you're using multiple pumps of foundation. This could be something to try. You can also do it on the back of your hand. Sometimes like the warmth of the back of your hand will also help you get a little bit further because the product will be a little bit warmed up. Thinner applications of every product, I think, is going to give you better wear time, a better look, a better finish, as opposed to going in very heavy-handed at first. Again, there's no real right or wrong way to do makeup. I'm not telling you that this is how you have to do your makeup, but if you ever run into problems involving like your foundation feeling or looking a little bit thicker than you want it to on the skin, this might be just something to try. I'm not going to use a different concealer, so I'm just going to change my brush and do the same thing. So I still have a lot of foundation left. And then I'm also going to take it over here and then just tap what I need under my eye. And this also for concealer, if I'm not applying it directly to my eye, like if it has an applicator wand, this also helps me get a much thinner application of concealer because I have problems with that fold under my eye. And I just think the more product I put under my eye, the worse it ends up looking, but I do want coverage there. I also haven't been like super loving the Dewdrop concealer all over my face, but again, we are just making an effort to finish it up. The next product I'm going to use is one of those steps that maybe not everyone's going to use, but it's a product I've been really enjoying. It's the Phytosurgeon Spectral Shine in the shade Cool Candlelight, and it's this pinkier version of this product. I have been told in my comment section that my complexion routine is a little bit extra, and this is a little bit extra, a step that I just really enjoy doing. And the Cool Candlelight is definitely the best iteration of this for my skin tone because I have neutral skin with a little bit of like a pinky undertone, and this is what this provides. It just adds a little bit of glow, just blurs a little bit. I take this dense brush and I push it into the skin, and I feel like as the northern hemisphere is heading into the spring summer time, having a little bit of a glow is pretty nice. Isn't it interesting that we kind of lean into what our skin wants to do naturally in the wintertime? I just feel like the whole time I've been into makeup, matte skin kind of is what we do in the wintertime, but maybe it's just because our skin's drier and we're like, okay, we're gonna do a little bit more of a matte look. And then in the summertime, it's like, we're gonna do glowy look because we're probably gonna be sweaty anyway. At least that's how I see it. That's my take on it. Since we are also heading into like the springtime, I wanted to use a bronzer. This is my only bronzer in my everyday makeup drawer right now. It's the Trixie Cosmetics bronzer, and it's in the shade Sunkissed. This is their cream bronzer. What a thing. What an unexpected find. Of course, I didn't try any of their powder eyeshadows. I wasn't expecting the bronzer to be like the big takeaway that I really enjoyed from Trixie Cosmetics because it's a brand by a drag queen, but this is very much like normal person makeup. And I say that very loosely. Like most people would wear this kind of thing every day. And it is, in my opinion, the best product I've tried from Trixie. And there's a lot of good from Trixie. Kind of the same thing that I was talking about with applying foundation. With cream bronzers, I kind of like to load up my brush as much as I can. And I also have found, even though I used to besmirch the largeness of this brush, this is the BK 105, but having a large brush for bronzer, I do think makes it look better and looks more organic on the skin because the product's getting diffused further and just blends out a little bit easier. Some people like to do more bronzer than I do. I feel like whenever I put bronzer on in videos, people are like, I don't see the bronzer at all. And I don't know, maybe that's just how I like the bronzer. It was so funny because today I was watching Hannah Louise posted a video, and her skin is even more fair than mine is. And she posted a video like using bronzer today. I don't know. I don't love the look of too much bronzer on me, but I get why people do it. Like there is something about it feeling like it's bringing life back to your skin. That's the Trixie bronzer in Sunkissed. Very natural, organic looking on my skin. They reposted one of my videos today. They did ask in case any of you saw that and were like, what's going on? We're moving on to highlighter before we put on blush today. This is the SURRATT liquid highlighter in the shade Froufrou. With this product, much like all of my other liquids, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to try to like avoid the foundation area, but if it gets into the foundation area, it's like not a real big deal. That is the foundation that I'm wearing today. So if I somehow get more of it onto my skin, it won't be a big deal. Putting it on my mixing palette, I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to load up the brush evenly. This is the BK 109, and I like this brush for liquid and cream highlighter. And I feel like loading up the brush and it's getting as many of the bristles covered in highlight, I feel like gives you a much more dispersed, natural looking highlight. Even though this highlighter is a little bit iridescent, like kind of flips purple, I just love the way it blends out whenever I do that. I like to do that with all of my cream highlighters. So if it's already in a pan, I will just dig it into the pan and then I will wipe it off on here. That's often what I like to do. It just gives you like a softer look. I'm gonna powder my face, my normal powder situation, and then we will move along to blush. I don't really have any secrets for powder. I feel like some people do have secrets for powder. I just use powder. I use like a lot of powders. Maybe it will be worthwhile to go through this because I feel like sometimes I'll get comments and be like, how do you use so many powders and still look glowy? I'm going to show you. So I use a couple of different powders. So the first powder I like to use is the under eye powder. This one's from Charlotte Tilbury. I'm not really like 100% committed to this one being like the best one, but it's one that I've gotten mostly through and I can finish it up. And I just really focus that under my eyes. And you can put it in more areas that you want brightening. Like if you would like a matte highlight on the top of your cheeks, I think this would work really well for that. Just like a matte white. It's going to like brighten a little bit, but it's not going to add any glow. And I also like to take this down my nose as opposed to the powder I use on the rest of my face. Then for the rest of my face, I will take this one. This one's from Hourglass. It's the Hourglass Vanish pressed powder. And I push it into everywhere but the high points of my cheek. I almost never set this portion of my face unless I'm using a powder highlighter, then I will. But if I'm not using a powder highlighter, if I have cream blush on, I will powder over the cream blush, but I won't take it over the highlighter. That way it doesn't dim the shine of the highlighter. I feel like it works to just make my skin still look pretty healthy. Also, the quality of the powder that you're using will decide the finish too. I feel like there are different qualities in powders. But maybe it's just like my corner of Instagram. There's a lot of conversations being had regarding setting and finishing. So like setting sprays, finishing sprays, setting powders, finishing powders, and like what the qualities of those have to be to actually qualify for those specific things. I've been laying powders for years and like sometimes they'll tell you they're a finishing powder and then I'm just like, oh, that's intended to be used after my face is set. For someone who has dry skin, maybe you do want the things from a finishing powder, but you don't want to use two powders, then you would just maybe use the finishing powder on the parts of your face that you want to use the finishing powder. But I have oily skin, so my skin can also take a lot of powder, but I am focusing the powder on the places that I feel like that powder is supposed to go. I wouldn't say to anyone who's starting makeup that you need more than one powder. Like I would say buy a setting powder first and then just like go from there and see how you like it, where that takes you. If I was to tell someone who is just starting out makeup, you need 4 powders, which I don't even need 4 powders. I just happen to use like 3 or 4 powders every time I do my face. There are just ways that you can do it to, I don't know. I just feel like my skin looks its best whenever I do all of this stuff, but it is extra and I do know that. And then I'm going to finish with the Chantecaille Perfect Blur what was this called? Perfect Blur finishing powder. And I'm just going to press that into the parts of my face that my pores are the most visible and large. So the center of my forehead is one of those places, and then the front parts of my cheek around my nose. But I don't really ever use this all over my face. Sometimes I'll run it down my nose, and sometimes I'll focus it under my eye too. That's normally where I stop with it. Depending on the time of year will also depend on whether or not I like finish my complexion with a spray. Right now we're kind of like leaving dry season, heading into like more humid times here in Pittsburgh. You know, it's still spring, so some days it's dry and some days it's wet and some days it's cold and you have the heat on and some days you don't. Like it's kind of, we're just like in that time of year. But I did just re-up on Fix Plus because the day that I'm recording this was the day that it was half off on Ulta's 21 Days of Beauty. And I think that's actually, I don't really participate in that often, but that's the second time. I don't know. I bought the Urban Decay eyeshadows from Ulta, but I don't think it was a 21 Days of Beauty. I think it was like a random sale. And this might be my first 21 Days of Beauty purchase, which is so funny to me. For blush today, we're going to also be using Chantecaille. This is the Chantecaille Wild Meadows blush in the shade Apple Blossom, which I think is just a very pretty poppy color. I feel like as to not go over, I chose a bronzer that looks more natural on my skin. I chose a highlighter that looks more natural on my skin to make sure that this is like the thing on my cheek that is popping. I think if I was doing like a bright colorful highlighter with a bright colorful cheek with a strong bronzer, that's like making more of a statement, then it's like my blush is going to be the statement today. Basically, as to slowly build this blush, I'm just going to like gently tap my blush brush in here. I'm going to also kick off the excess. And I always start in the back of my cheek when I'm building a cheek because I do, if I'm gonna have a stronger portion of the cheek, I want it to be back here. This is the way my face is shaped and how I've learned how I like to do my makeup. I do prefer things being pulled up and out, and that's just my preference. But there are people who really love to have the most dense color on the front of their cheek. I just prefer it back here. And so I kind of always, when I'm first laying pigment, I start back there and then I pull what's left on the brush towards the front of my face. And then that way I'm getting that beautiful pop of pink color, but I don't feel like I'm getting like too much of it. And you can build this as much as you want. So if you really want the cheek to be strong, you can just keep going and going. And I think this is about where I'm gonna stop. I do want more pink than I usually would whenever I'm doing my makeup, because I do wanna have like fun color. So that's where I'm going to stop. Every time you put your brush back into the compact, you're picking up more, but also there's still some left from the last time you picked up. And so I always just feel like the second cheek always feels like it starts off stronger because there's just more on the brush already. And then to make the blend a little more seamless, because I don't know that that was my best blending with the blush, I'm just taking my powder brush and I'm just going to go over the front, because I just don't like, I don't know, I feel very childlike whenever my front parts of my cheeks are rosy too. And that's not like the look that I'm really going for. And then you can just run this also over any section that you feel like maybe got a little bit too much of the blush. I'm very pleased with where we are right now. And then basically I'm going to follow the same thing that I did whenever I was picking out the products from my everyday makeup drawer. I'm going to pick a very neutral base for my eyeshadow. So I'm going to be using the Merit Studio eyeshadow, and I'm just going to put it all over my lid just to like have something for the color to go on, but something that is pretty organic looking to my skin, because I want the color to feel really easy to wear as opposed to like having to do a lot of color. And I think I'm gonna wear yellow eyeshadow. And now that I'm thinking about it, I think that the Apple Blossom blush was also the one I wore in that video as well. And I'm doing the same eye. Then I'm gonna go into this yellow shade from CLIONADH and just sweep that on top of the matte that I just put down. I just picked up a ton. I want it to be a slow build, so I'm using a fluffier brush. And that's kind of it. Like, I didn't really do a ton of yellow, but I have a little bit of it. I've just been like wearing like, and when I say I'm wearing color, I'm like, I know that it's very little, like, but you know, there's just more color than I have been wearing in a while. I just feel like I've been so into like the browns of it all and been really into like different textures of that like smoky taupey kind of thing. Having this much color on my face, not uncomfortable, but it's like it's just a very easy way to do color, more color on the face than I have been. So maybe just try it out. If you're someone who likes to wear a lot of browns and you have a pink blush that you haven't worn in a while, put it on before you wash your face just to see how it looks. I've been really enjoying the no mascara look. And I also feel like the eyeliners that I own, maybe minus that new chartreuse one I got from About Face, would make this eye look a little bit heavy for what I want it to be. I want it to feel very light and airy. Mascara would probably be okay, but I don't even want to really wear mascara. So I'm just going to move along to the lip. And for the lip, and I don't think I probably could even do a punchy lip with the amount of color I have on my face, where it could like really just bring it all together. I don't have a lot of colorful lip products because it's just not something that I feel like I reach for. I have a couple very colorful ones, but I think for the purposes of this, I'm just going to put on Baby, which is something that looks like very nude on my skin tone. So I'm just going to throw that on. Fun new thing about the hair that I'm noticing about me and the hair. I like the way it feels the best when it's washed, but I like the way it looks the best when it's dirty. In my opinion, when I have dry shampoo in my hair, it feels dirty. So we're at this, an impasse, I would say, whenever it comes to the state of my hair. Still loving it long, by the way. So no worries. I'm not planning on cutting it. And this was sent to me in PR. This is the shade Baby from Merit in their signature lip. And there's a very easy, breezy, fun way to wear color for people who maybe aren't into wearing color. And that's going to be the end of the video. Hopefully you found this a little bit helpful to approach maybe bright, colorful makeup in a way that feels a little more wearable to you. Also keep in mind that there are no rules to makeup. So if you want to put all the color on your face, also be culturally sensitive when I say that. Put all the colors on your face. You know what I mean? Don't twist that. If you want to put as many colors on your face as you want, you should absolutely do that because there are no rules. Where I'm at in my makeup journey and how I want to wear makeup is different than yours. So you might want to want to put all the color on your face. And if you need tutorials on how to do that, right now, at this juncture, I'm not going to be the one who's going to offer that kind of thing to you, but that's also okay. You can still come here and hang out and do your bright, colorful makeup while I put a little bit of yellow on my eyes and go, look at that. Look at that color on my eyes. That's going to wrap up the video. In the pinned comment down below, I will have some links to help some people. If you have the means to help those people, feel free to do so. I also have Patreon and channel memberships. You can find those linked down below in my description box. Over there, I do one additional video every single month. It's kind of like pay what you want if you want to pay. If you don't want to do that, no worries. I'm just happy that you are here, liking, commenting, and sharing my content. Is that it? No, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, but this feels like more like for the people that are already here. But if you are new, hit the subscribe button. Using makeup that I already own is kind of what I like to focus on here. That's going to end the video. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to follow your haute, and you'll find me, and I'll see you in a video very soon. Go forth. Tits out.